Welcome to Fullmetalrpg. I'm your host, Richie Buzzkill, and I want to welcome you to the show where we talk about tough subjects in RPGs, tabletop RPGs. Though today we're only going to be talking about RPG podcasts, because we may get tough about it, we may not. Stay tuned. I want to introduce my co-hosts here. Ashley. How are you doing, Ashley?
I'm doing fantastic right now. My AC broke at my house, and you would think it would be cool enough to not need one, but we're in Arizona and it is constantly hell. So I'm recording from a different location tonight.
Very well. Yes, it's always fun. And then on the Alan Bar Cam, we've got Darrell, my brother from another mother. How you doing, Darrell?
Good. It's good. I like recording a little bit earlier because I'm awake. I'm actually here and present, and my brain is activated to do the word thing. So,
well,
my dog. I could hear a little whine. So yeah, that's the other thing is my dog is with me, so you might hear that every once in a while during the show. But
fun
eventually
times.
When the cats figure out that your dog is here, we'll see the cats and dog fighting on camera.
Hey, we'll clip that out and we'll stick that on the channel trailer or something like that.
It's fine. Yeah.
So, Ashley.
Yeah.
I know it's hot. Your air conditioning is broke, but have you gotten to do any RPG stuff lately?
Yes. So the Thursday night, that's my new big thing that I get to do is on Thursday nights, the Gallant night game. We have the actual play stream that we do. So right now we're doing Tiny Supers. We're doing a Gallant Burst campaign. So we are 2 episodes into that at this point. The third one is going to be this Thursday. I'm not going to be there for it because I'm going to be hanging out at the bottom of the ocean instead. But yes.
Other adventures.
Yeah, other adventures. I'm going to do real life adventures instead of the gaming kind. But we did 2 weeks ago, so a week and a half ago, we did a one-shot of Kaiju, Mecha, and Monsters, because there's a Kickstarter for it right now.
Oh, nice.
And I got to play a giant scorpion god, named Scorpicus.
Rad.
So yes, it was so much fun, because it was just a one-shot. We just said, hey, this is what I want to be, and Alan made our Kaiju for us, and just ran us through this story, and it was so much fun. Just so much destruction, and I got to pick up a coffee shop and throw it at someone.
I mean,
so, yeah.
Did you give a good line when you threw it, or just a roar, or?
Yeah, just a roar. There wasn't really any talking. Well, no, there was talking because I was super narcissistic, and that was a lot of fun to play. So, because I was a scorpion god, so yeah, it was great. But I picked up the coffee shop with my tail and the mecha that we were fighting.
Oh, okay. Well, so this was a question I'm trying to figure out. So are you multiple monsters attacking a city? Or are you monsters and the mecha, and then the game master is like the referee, but the fight between the two, or how is there a story?
Yeah, you can do it any way you want. So you can be kaiju fighting each other. There's a trait that you can take as a kaiju that if you see another kaiju, you have to fight them. It's called alpha. So something like that would be fighting each other. So you can do that. You can do a group of them just taking over city. There are stats, I believe, for mechs in there too. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. Mecha and Monsters is already out. This is going to be the second one. I can't think of the word.
A reprint?
Evolved? No, second edition. It's evolved.
Okay.
It's an extra. More stuff is going to be in it.
Oh, okay. More settings probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Yeah. So we have that. I've got Memory Alpha. We've been recording, so that's been fun.
Well, we'll talk more about Memory Alpha here in the subject of our podcast.
Yes, we will. Yes, absolutely. So, and then other than that, we're just trying to figure out how to get our Pathfinder games back going, because we all miss them, and we all keep talking in the group chat oh my god, I miss everybody, we need to start playing again, and then we don't get together and play again. So yes. I'm let's schedule something then. So yeah, that's been we played something. We played The Quiet Year. last weekend.
Oh,
Yeah, I
love
forgot
the
about
Quiet
that
Year.
until right now. So one of the things we want to do at the commune is every month, because we have so many different RPGs, we want to just pick one and play it, just have a game night. And so we played the Quiet Year, One Quiet Year, the Quiet Year.
The
I think
Quiet
it's
Year.
the Quiet Year. Yeah. So we played that last weekend, and it was ridiculous. Like there were mermaids that built aquarium tanks so that they could invade like on land. I mean, so I know that it's supposed to be, I guess, supposed to be kind of serious, but we just
Well,
can't.
you can
Like,
be as serious as you want because it's
right.
essentially there is very little. It's one of these games that's very open ended.
Hmm.
You can have, it just depends on the group you have as to how
Yes.
serious the game ends up being. Now, the
Mhm.
end of the game is very serious,
Yeah.
but you don't have to treat
Yeah.
it as such because
Mm-mm.
some people are perfectly good at willfully willfully illusioning away any kind of end of
Hmm.
the world stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah, it was fun. And Jeremy kept deciding every time we would try and be like, "Oh, we're trying to do this," and there's these like really out there kind of things that are happening, he would be like, "There's a mountain and there are kobolds, and we need to attack the kobolds in the mountain." Like, and so every time it came
he's
around to
trying to
his
be
turn,
D&D. He's trying to just
yeah,
bring D&D to the Quiet Year.
yes, he is the Pathfinder GM that we have. So he's very, yeah. So
He
he's the
didn't quite get it, huh?
yeah. Oh no, he got it just fine. It was just that's his sweet spot. So it was just
Mm.
really funny because, like I said, they were mermaid aquarium tanks that were rolling in, and he was just like stuck on these kobolds. So it was a lot of
We ended
fun.
up militarizing. We created
Yeah.
our own kobold terrorist army that we almost had to deal with, but the game ended
Yep.
before we had to do anything with them.
Mm.
Fortunately, yeah, I pulled the king. So, yep.
It's
But
like,
it was
oh,
so much fun. I really liked it.
this is done, and we're done. And all right, well, sounds amazing. Darrell, what have you been up to in the world of RPGs?
Monster Mondays continues. The players do fantastic confounding things. Trying to build a mystery and trying to leave plot hooks is as far as you as a GM can go. When the players decide to walk away and seduce werewolves, you just kind of roll with it. So that's it's been a lot of fun. It continues to be a lot of fun, and it's so nice to spend time with friends, doing regular Vampire the Requiem gaming. So we're probably 3 sessions away from our big apex before we're gonna do a time jump. So we're playing neonates right now. We're gonna play like higher powered characters in the future, and depending on their choices at the upcoming big event in the game, we'll decide where that goes and what they do next. But it's been a lot of fun and continues to be a lot of fun. And yeah, the story is amazing so far, and I'm excited to see what they do.
Well, I've been missing our lunches so that I can't really catch up on the story. So we're gonna have to
Yeah.
we'll have to coordinate that at some point.
Yep, definitely. Next week we'll get together for sure.
All right, fair enough. So really, I have two things. I think we're almost close to wrapping up Ravenloft. Brendan's running Ravenloft, and we're kind of treating it like 10 sessions is a season kind of thing, trying to. And yeah, see, was it yeah, I think we almost died again. Well, one character died. I dragged two other characters out of a situation, and then we got the local underworld warlord decided to drag us in because we were in his territory, even though no one was there. So, but we were told by two different factions of people that we must deal with the thing we stirred up. So the toy man must go, but I don't know if we could kill a kobold at this point. So, so we'll see. I was so OSR that I broke out the DCC dice, even though I didn't need them. Hopefully we can make it work because we have a plan to confront the toy man, who is apparently allergic to sunlight. In Ravenloft, I don't know what
Weird.
what am I gonna fight in Ravenloft it's afraid of the sun? I don't know. Anyways, that's not important. Um, So yeah, that was kind of getting close. Well, and I guess one more. We wrapped up our Tiny D6 Tiny Dungeons story. Paul that was on here for the deep dive was running it. We've kind of wrapped it up, and he made it so there was no both factions. There was no real bad guy. So it was very, very difficult to actually choose what to do. When there is no bad guy in a fantasy game, how do you choose what faction you're going to go with? Yeah. Because both of them are right. So it was a lot of, he loves philosophical quandaries, and so do I. So we had some good times talking a little philosophical debate as we did. And then because it's been so nice now, admittedly, Ashley's not wrong that it's still in the 90s, but it's been so nice that I've started to ride my bicycle around the world again. And I decided, you know what? I'll ride over to Game Depot. Now, I'm not very far from Game Depot here in Tempe. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go over there. I pre-ordered a model. I'll just go pick it up and ride back. And they're like, oh yeah, we didn't actually get that for you, but mate, we'll get it for you next time we get that order in. But what I did pick up is Alien, the role-playing game. Nice. Now, you can't see this on, most of you can't see this, but it is like a 5-pound book. At least it's a good hefty book. Now, I'm not out of shape, but I put it in my backpack and it just was a little bit of a drag as I was riding my bicycle back from the game shop. So I'm glad that I don't GM and ride a bicycle, because I can imagine the amount of books I would stick in my bag and then regret it on the way home kind of thing. But, a friend of mine is talking about running it, and so that I didn't need an excuse because I wanted to buy it anyways. But we'll see whether we get into some Alien action. And I also bought the dice because I like the font on the dice. Not that I needed them, because the Modifius dice, it's just such a weird choice, because basically it's just a different 6 with a symbol on it. Like, it's really... Like,
is it all D6?
Yeah, it's just D6.
Oh, okay.
So like I got a handful of D6 here. Okay. That's the dice pack for it. I haven't read it, but I'm assuming that's all the kinds of dice you need to play Alien.
I would hope so. If they just like loaded you up with D6s and they're like, so you're gonna need a full set of polyhedral, 7 different,
That would be pretty funny.
I don't know anything about the game, but I wonder if it's like a dice pool kind of thing. But
I think it's a dice pool. It's the same system as Mutant Year Zero, and so it's Free League. So Free League has their own system. I always have Free League and Modifius in the same picture for me, which I think Modifius has published some of the Free League stuff, but I think Free League is doing their own stuff now. So Modifius is the 2D20, and then Free League is this like D6. I think it's a die pool system. I really had a lot of fun playing Mutant Year Zero. And actually, I think it's got the Tales from Loop, Mutant Year Zero. Those systems are all the same. So it's kind of really quite simple and fun. So we'll see. And I've heard good things about the Alien. There's always this discussion of Alien versus Mothership. Mothership being kind of coming out first and being more of an indie darling, and then Alien kind of coming out about the same time, but being more maximalist, because Mothership is a little pamphlet and then Alien is like a 5-pound book. Right. Yeah. But they're now going to do a Mothership hardback, which I think has a bunch of that's a Kickstarter that's coming up pretty soon. So who knows? But the Mothership layout and imagery and the way it looks is amazing. So I can totally see that being a very nice hardback to get get stuck into.
It would also be really wonderful if that hardback was just the pamphlet with like
That's what I was
heavy
thinking.
cardboard stock front and back. It's still 5 pages.
Yep.
It's just got like an extra inch worth of cardboard on either side.
Well,
Clap it like an empty binder.
it's your like sound for like starting
Yeah.
your movies and stuff like that.
Right. I think Modifius did Star Trek Adventures too, didn't they?
Yes, Modifius does Star Trek Adventures, the 2D20 system, which is Star Trek Adventures.
Mhm.
And yeah, so Free League is, I think they do really beautiful work. And while it's a giant thick book, I kind of flip through it. The pages are not like crammed. Like I'm used to books being that big and then you get into them and they're dual column with very small font. I'm not discussing any kind of very specific 5th edition of any game that has come out relatively recently for a horror franchise that we all know and love that might be a terrible layout. This is a nice, clean, big, big pages. Like if you have vision problems, it could be easier to actually read. So, which is nice. So, anyway. So that's what I've been up to mostly. But hey, we're gonna moving right along here. Do a little announcement, a little Patreon break here. We would like to thank our Patreon supporters for keeping us recording and not in the streets jabbering on the corner about the end of the world in some RPG or another. It's really helpful to keep us not being arrested for being vagrants talking about RPGs on corners.
But if that's something you like to see, if that would get some more subscriptions, we'll do it for you.
I mean, we'll still do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can, now that it's not, Arizona is not going to kill us when we go outside as much. I mean, there's like another month or so, but we can definitely do some on the street, questions of like the 4 people that don't have any place else to go because no one is on the street even when it's nice in Arizona. I've never quite figured that out. Like even when it's nice, you don't see anybody around. It's like sort of like a zombie movie, but there's enough cars moving around that you can't.
That's the thing is they're in their cars. They're not walking. Probably.
Right. Should like if their windows down, like stick the microphone like, sir, what is your opinion on Vampire the 5th edition? Get away.
Just like standing behind the gas station, like, hey kids, you want some dice? So, totally.
Open our jean vests, and there's just dice.
Right. Got a whole bunch of little chess X sets that we can pull out real quick. Little starter sets.
Yeah, you need to add those as little hooks inside. But hey, new patron alert. We want to welcome Nick to the Zealots, our grand club of supporters. Nick joined us recently, and we were very excited to have them on board. So if you'd like to support or join Nick in supporting us, go to patreon.com/fullmetalrpg. And remember, the patrons get the pre-show exclusively early. And now we had kind of an interesting pre-show where we did talk about some non-RPG podcasts, as well as Ninja Turtles and scuba diving and a couple other things. But only the patrons get to see the weirdness that is the pre-show. It's a lot of fun. But or people that come to watch us on twitch.tv/fullmetalrpg from the very beginning when we start streaming. So so we'll get into the topic of the show here. So we're going to talk about what our RPG podcasts. We do one. Some of us listen to more than other of us. But I enjoy them a great deal. And we did this topic before. You may say, Richie, you did this topic like a year and a half ago. Why?
Richie, you did this topic a year ago?
Yes. We did this topic for about 5 minutes before it got derailed into OSR talk, which I enjoy. We see last episode. Editor's note, state of the art OSR. And I figured why not revisit this particular topic? And because I listened to, and I counted it up if I listened to 14 RPG podcasts, one of those is Fullmetal RPG, because I still make sure the product is as good as I can make it.
Yep. And
make sure that it actually downloaded correctly. So we're going to talk about topic RPG podcasts, and we'll get into actual plays because Ashley does some actual plays, and I listen to a couple of them. So, Darrell, you said earlier you had a show that kind of got you into RPG podcasts and kind of helped you get kind of ramp back up in the hobby.
Yeah. So way back when Adam first asked me to join the Wrecking Crew, start gaming again, I was really intimidated at the thought of jumping in with no idea what I was doing. My only experience with RPGs had been Dungeons and Dragons, advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So I was worried about the math and the dice, and I didn't have any idea how any of it worked. So I started scrambling, and it was about the same time that I started picking up podcasts in general. So Role-Playing Public Radio, RPPR, does both a live play and an RPG advice podcast. And their crew is fantastic. They are very personable. They won, I think it was their first couple of years, or it was maybe just when I started listening to them, they won some major awards for podcasting. Their production values are high, and both sides of their podcast are amazing. But what I really like about the sides of it is they explain the rules, and they will play through a game like they were playing Vampire the Masquerade, and they would describe, here's what the rules are, here's why we're rolling these things. And they would kind of explain it up front and then just let it fall and start just talking about what they were doing. So you got a little bit of the mechanics. If you wanted to learn a game, they discuss the mechanics enough that you can get your head around it before they just start jumping in and playing, and the mechanics don't get in the way of what they're doing. And I picked up so many cool games because they jump around so much with different games. That's where I picked up my love for Dirty World. Role-Playing Public Radio is fantastic, and I tried to look up all of their people, and they don't have bio pages on their website. So, unfortunately, you'll just have to type in Role-Playing Public Radio and get to their podcast.
Yeah, because I was looking at Patreon and trying to figure out kind of what other RPG podcasts do for their patrons, and they're actually the top funded RPG podcasts on Patreon. So,
wow,
yeah. Interestingly enough that someone, could actually live off of that. So, if you lived in a slightly cheaper part of the world than we do. But that's it's a good call. I know that actually I think Brendan and Adam have been on that show in previous years. I was going to reach out and see if I could have a conversation with them and see if we can get there. But I do listen to so many podcasts. But the one that I would say would be a good first for a while is Ken and Robin talk about stuff. Now, this is where Brendan stopped me last time, so I'm just going to complete this sentence before, because yes, I have kind of dropped off on them, but their advice and their kind of talking back forth is still amazing. It's just, it's a couple of old guys who Robin D. Laws and Ken Haidt, who are some of our favorite RPG designers, do a podcast where they talk about stuff, but they basically make scenarios, and they talk. They talk a little too much about cooking, but um, but it's some really fascinating because they're history nerds. Like if you like that history podcast, we were talking about history stuff. Like they're like deep lore history nerds. So that was fun. But I just wanted to say that because I don't know why. I don't know
Well,
why.
you got it out now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
interrupt
exactly.
there.
Now
You
we'll,
said
we'll
it,
talk
it's a
about
thing.
more interesting.
And I'm
What
gonna
I
have to listen to them now because I was unaware of their existence. So that sounds like fun.
yeah, I could talk about stuff that I'm more addicted to. But Ashley, I know that you said that you're not the biggest podcast listener.
Yeah.
But-
So I'm not a huge podcast listener anyway, even though I do like 4 of them. I do listen to some, but
Right.
a lot of them are not RPG podcasts because, like we were talking about in the pre-show, I would rather play games and like talk about games with my friends than I would listen to other people talking about games. So I appreciate that everyone who listens to this does not feel the same way I do about that because that's what we do. But I just don't. My time that I have to be able to listen to stuff is very limited, so I have to be very picky about what I do listen to. So I do have one that I know the people who do it, and they're all great people. So I'm assuming their podcast is great, and that's Happy Jacks. Happy
Yeah.
Jacks has their advice show, and they have their actual play stuff that they do too. And everyone that I've met that is with that Happy Jacks crew has been amazing. I like all of them. So
I am a regular listener of Happy Jack's RPG podcast. I too know a few of those people. Chris Gray is in particular one of my good friends, and I really I enjoy. I enjoy the fact that they found a format that kind of regenerates itself and is relatively easy to program for. In the fact that they do, they get emails and then they answer those emails. Which is a fantastic way of getting content, and I do enjoy that. That as it goes on, they people will like actually ask them different questions, so that there is sometimes people ask the same questions, but I really enjoy it, and someday I'll listen to one of their actual plays. Maybe I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, the Happy Jacks actual plays are equally good. I have to give them a lot of credit too because when I started GMing, they were the GM advice show that I went to, and I know that we collaborated with them a little bit back in the days of the Wrecking Crew podcast The Reckoning. I was really intimidated to talk to them, so I declined to be on those episodes, and it was a mistake because they're so nice and they're such cool people. So yeah, Happy Jacks. And the segment I love the most, my guilty pleasure with them, is the gaming horror stories. It's always amazing to hear about the ways that things can go wrong in the hobby because they're good object learning opportunities. So I appreciate that they share those, and I'm glad that I don't have that many to share myself. So
yes,
yeah, they're mail, and I think with any podcast, the mailbag idea, just getting that much feedback and that much generated interest is amazing. So kudos to them for being able to get that much interest and that much constant stream of feedback and things to talk about. So
yeah.
And you keep mentioning it, and we should talk about it. Is Podcast The Reckoning? It's a great show. It's a great show.
Well, thank you.
And I is it still up? I don't even.
I was trying to look for a working link. I'm not sure if we're still. It was on iTunes. It was on Stitcher. So I wasn't able to find a direct link or any page with links left to it.
Right.
It was taken down at one point because one of our members had a personal issue pop up and needed to scrub internet existence. But I don't know if it ever got put back up. So if you can find it, Podcast The Reckoning, that's WRECKENING, is a fantastic listen. And you can go and hear me as a baby podcaster and back when I was known as the newbie GM.
But yeah, I mean, it does take money to keep a podcast RSS alive. So I could totally understand if that maybe went away. But if you can find it, highly recommend. They did, they're very much a White Wolf crew, talked a lot about White Wolf stuff, but they did a lot of great GM advice. So if you can find that dead show, watch it. listen to
somebody's
it.
got tapes left in their basement or something.
Yeah, I'm
That'd be
sure.
amazing.
I'm sure somebody has archived it somewhere. Pirate Bay. Check your Pirate Bay. But on the same kind of vein of GM advice, I also listened to Fear the Boot, which it is another one of the kind of older shows. They're kind of a different take on that, on the GM advice segment. And one of the reasons that we don't do a lot of GM advice is because there are so many GM advice shows that it's sort of hard to show up in that space. But Fear the Boot, I really like their stuff, and they did a lot of actual plays, but I think that they definitely try to talk about the more difficult subjects, and we appreciate that because that's what we like to do as well. So Fear the Boot's a lot of fun too, and
that's one that I've heard of. I've actually heard of Fear the Boot. So
all right. Well,
for what that's worth. I was like, for as little as I know about it, that was another one that I had kind of come across. So
all right.
I'm glad to hear it's good.
So we've talked about some GM advice podcasts. I've got one that's purely like not GM advice and all actual play. And it's very popular. Adventure Zone. If you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons fantasy role playing and you want to hear people who are on a personal journey to learn how to role play, it's about the friendships they made along the way. It's the McElroy brothers. They are freaking hilarious. They get their dad to play. Listen from episode 1 forward. Don't jump in late because it's like a train. It gets rolling slow, but it goes really well. And I have not listened to an episode I did not enjoy. So the McElroy brothers do so much. Like there's so many good podcasts they put out, but I think Adventure Zone, if you're looking for a very popular, well-produced, and fun show to listen to, Adventure Zone is amazing.
And they're great. I mean, Travis in particular, just them as people are just awesome people. But didn't they do Monster of the Week for a while? Like it's not just D&D. Haven't they switched up the game system that they play?
I haven't got that far.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have to go back and start.
I think I heard that as well, but like I think I bounced off of that, but I'm not certain why. Like I tried it and I just didn't make it very far. But that's just kind of my thing with actual plays. Like there's only one that I have stuck through all the way, and that is Mammary Alpha. Is probably the only AP that I actually have listened to all the way through, and will continue to listen to because it's interesting. I find D&D podcast actual plays very boring, like super boring.
That's the thing is like
even if they know what they're doing, it's still boring.
It's just there's so much they're so mechanics heavy a lot of the time. So when you're doing like an actual play podcast, you want something that's more narrative driven, that you can do a story instead of just worrying about mechanics. So we started out using a D20 modern system. That was before I even joined up. And so
computer
those episodes are not as
use for the win.
Good. They're not as good as we went to Fate Accelerated, and that's a really good narrative system, but we found our sweet spot with Tiny Frontier. So we get to use the Tiny D6 system on that. But I agree that a lot of the actual play podcasts that use the more, like, I don't know if there even is like a Pathfinder actual play.
Oh, I'm sure there are people.
Sure.
I'm sure there are people that do it. I have no idea though.
That would have to be a video podcast so you can see the tactical awareness.
Right.
You have to have like all the numbers. It's like the Matrix. You just have to see the numbers streaming down the stream to have it make any sense whatsoever. But yeah,
it'd be hard
go ahead
to edit the sound with all that crunch.
Yeah. Sorry, hold on. Let me roll all the dice I need to roll. But yeah, I enjoy. I sometimes I'll listen to like in just to mention one of our friends' podcasts. I don't know if I think it's slowed down, or RPG Block, which was another name before, but they did like kind of a custom cyberpunk Shadowrun kind of like world that was kind of interesting. They kind of ended that story arc, but there's our friend Kirby was doing that on the Discord. So I do try them, like. But like I find that because we we did some actual plays, and I found that, yeah, just like what you're saying is like the kind of the less the rules are interfaced with, the more fun it gets. But you have to have people that are legitimately trying to tell a story and not trying to just be funny.
Yes.
Right? Because
yeah, and and that's kind of the other side of the coin that I want to talk about today is like what makes a good actual play podcast. Because I know we tried it with Podcast The Reckoning a couple of times, and production values is like number one. I think if you're going to jump into that space, be prepared for sound editing, and that's going back to Memory Alpha. One of my favorite things is the amount of editing that goes into that, the cool sound effects and things. It's cool to hear some of the behind the scenes stories from you, Ashley. But be prepared to do that. Don't just have your buds sitting around the table with a Yeti in the middle, and potato chip bags and the whole shebang. Because while that is integral to the experience, the crumpling of bags and things like that can really get in the way. So.
And I want to give a shout out to Danielle Ross is the one who does our editing for Memory Alpha, and she's such a perfectionist when it comes to that it really shows in the end. It stresses her out, and so that sucks. Like, I hate that it stresses her out so much, but things like there's one noise that she left in was I was eating Cheetos and I thought my mic was muted. And it turns out it was not. And so there was like a very tense conversation in the captain's ready room. And there was like a moment of like just quiet. And then you hear this crunch, crunch. And then everyone starts laughing. And I was like, oh my God, can you hear me? But other than that, I mean, she goes out, she found sound clips. So there's so many sound clips out there for free. So if you're interested in doing an actual play, there's so many resources out there. And also we do music clips too, which I know Richard has mentioned in the past that he doesn't like any of the sounds that are not Star Trek related directly, but one of my favorite games is to reference a song and make Danny go download it to put it into the podcast.
I know this is your favorite game because I know how many clips they, but it's one of those things where like I get that Star Trek is in our future theoretically, hopefully, if we can survive all the disasters between here now and then. But it's just one of those things where like I also think it could be a problem if you ever got like bigger that you might have to get rid of those things so you could actually have them on other platforms. I understand that there is a limit of fair use, but a lot of people do not. YouTube is not particularly kind to even fair use. So that's the reason I don't do it anymore.
Our GM is actually a trademark attorney, and so we are very careful about what we use and how much we use. She's Susie, so she's very familiar with all of those laws and what we can get away with and what we can't. So we're very particular about the sound clips that we use. But that is something else to be aware of if you go into the actual play universe,
right?
Or any podcast, really.
Yes, any podcast, because there are. I think we did get a copyright strike at one point on one of our episodes because they're a very old episode where I think Brendan put the entirety of Welcome to the Jungle at the end of an episode. So, which is really funny.
Yeah.
But also kind of could be an issue. But I but there are shows that like I feel like are RPGs, but they're not actually. There's a show called Hello from the Magic Tavern, which is not an actual play. They're basically pretending to do a podcast in a fantasy world because somebody fell through a portal and they're just doing a podcast. So it's sort of this meta thing of these improvers, like kind of like the Adventure Zone is the improvers, but it's actually a better RPG podcast because they actually play, cubicles and offices or something like that. Is it like, so the fantasy characters are playing cubicles and offices in one episode, but they're actual funny improv people, like they're Chicago improv. So like, if you're not, try not, that's a lot of what I bounce off of is like, guys, if you're not a professional, don't try this at home.
You know what? But I have to argue with that. That's not, do it. Just do it, because you can get better as you go.
Right.
If we had stopped at episode 1 of Podcast The Reckoning because of our sound quality or because we weren't that funny, we wouldn't have gotten as far as we did.
Right.
So
You know, it's an act
do it
of
anyway.
doing RPG, doing a podcast is an act of ego. No matter what you're doing, is an act of ego to try and like, why with a million podcasts out there, you know, what am I adding to this world? And the truth is, you're adding yourself to this world, and we need more RPG podcasts, because I looked up, you know, I was saying, I was looking up RPG podcasts on Patreon, and we're like the 6th most funded RPG podcast on Patreon. Which tabletop RPG podcast, we're like the 6th or 7th, and we're
Awesome.
very
Go
low.
us.
We have a very very low number compared to all these other people.
Mhm.
It means there's a lot of space out there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you want to start one, speaking of space, podcasts, they're kind of helping with the spaces. There's a podcast called Behold Her, which is about women in the RPG space, of femmes in the RPG space.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think she's ending it after next episode, but there's like a good 30 or 40 episodes of interviews with femmes in the RPG space, and it's fascinating. And I've definitely discovered some very interesting conversations and games out there. I really enjoy that show. I'm really sad that it's ending, but I totally understand that, you know, you sometimes you know, it's a limited series. You do it till you can, you know, unlike where we're doing seasons, 5-year long season followed by a 6-month season followed by another 6-month
Right.
season. So like, you know, but
I think
go ahead.
when it comes to, you kind of bring up a good point about getting into the space and things like that, is look what's out there and see if there's a space that you can fit into that is vacant. So I think a lot of the demographics on a lot of the RPG podcasts out there are very similar. So if you can't, like with Behold Her, if it's a femme-led podcast on gaming, there's probably a lot fewer of those out there than there are us, you know, for example.
Yes.
So kind of look at that and see, is there a space for your voice to be heard where it needs to be heard, where it's not being heard currently?
Or if you look at a space and go, all this is garbage, start a podcast there. I'm just saying, like, if you think that all the other like GM advice shows are garbage, start a GM advice show. I think there's a lot of good ones there, but I can certainly understand, like, I definitely like, there are shows I listen to that do RPG advice. Shout out to friends of the show, Human Energy Field, who I listen to and disagree with vehemently, who I should go ask Jamie and Henry to be on their show so I can disagree with them vehemently. But they're doing them and they're talking about their truth. And that's one of the things about RPG podcasts. So I love you guys, but I also disagree with you a lot. So now that I've put a shout out on blast, we'll see what happens. Anyways.
So yeah, when I say your voice, I don't mean like simply your gender orientation, things like that. That's not what I mean by your voice. It could be just that your takes are totally different. Like your views and your experiences have led you to a point where you don't see things the same way as these other people see them. So yeah, if you think it's trash because you're like, these opinions suck and I wish there was someone to speak for not these people, then yes, absolutely. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I mean by your voice.
Right, exactly. Just like the, you know, a show I'm hoping, because I've mentioned it multiple times, that other people have heard of, which is Asians Represent, which I think it has a lot of interesting things to say about RPGs and in the Asian perspective on that. I highly recommend it. It's very interesting, and you know, they're big now, so I don't necessarily need to, but you know, they do actual plays as well. I think that's probably even more popular than their topic show. But they read through was it Oriental Adventures and commented upon Oriental Adventures from the 1980s from the beginning. So yeah, a lot of good conversations. Like I think they got like a half a
Yeah.
column a show.
Yeah.
so
That would be a really tricky one for anyone other than them to do. So I'm
correct.
really glad that again their voice is in this space to talk about that.
Right.
So yeah, that's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
There's definitely some people that should, RPG, there's a lot of podcasts, but there's also not a lot of podcasts. So if you have a voice, we'd like to hear it. So
Yeah. Yes. So you kind of led me down the rabbit hole here. I went and I looked up Behold Her, and the page that I landed on was a Podchaser page, Women in RPGs, a curated list that includes a lot of really good, what it looks like I'm going to be listening to for a while now. Magpies Roll Like a Girl, Fate and Fable Maidens, Dames and
They're
Dragons, D20 Dames, Ladies Slaying Dragons, the Broadswords Ghost Puncher Corps. That got my attention.
Broadswords, I will say, they are friendly with the McElroys, and so they started at the same time as Memory Alpha. There were not really any women RPG actual plays out at that time. So we started, like, we released our first episode like a week or a month before they did, but they got in with the Adventure Zones. So they are huge. They have blown up, and it's awesome, and I love it. They're a lot of fun. They're another one that I have listened to some of their episodes. They're pretty good. I like them a lot, but they're by far the biggest femme actual play that's out there is the Broadswords.
yeah, I definitely listened to Fate and the Fable Maidens for a while, and I liked a good number of those episodes before I kind of fell off. But and I know that people come and go from podcasts, and I sort of have some of that. There's definitely some shows that I've come and gone on, but I also, there's shows that I've listened to every single episode with a great anticipation. Well, like Full Metal RPG, hint, hint.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Actually,
Yeah.
but Go ahead.
Let's say why we were talking about actual plays before we move on from that.
All right.
So there's a fuck ton of fantasy actual plays out there. There are a lot of, because it's D&D, things like that. There's one called the Lovely Craftians. They do Call of Cthulhu, and they've been going for a couple years now, and they're still active. And they are one that I've listened to. They're pretty good. So production value wise, they're not as like. There are some that I've heard that are definitely not as edited, so they do edit and do a good job at that. But it's an all-femme Call of Cthulhu actual play. That's really interesting. I like it a lot. So they're called the Lovely Craftians.
Very cool.
Very nice. Yeah, I definitely want to give a shout out to Darker Days Radio, our good friends over at Darker Days Radio. They are a great horror focused podcast that they're our good friends, and I really feel like they're worth, if you like a horror RPG, they definitely have a great focus there, where we've sort of wandered around and like a little ADD in our focus on things. So
That's us, who we are as people, though. So
that's true.
Makes sense.
That's
yes.
true. So.
All right. Well, I got one more shout out myself in the realm of representation, Dungeons and Drag Queens. Richard, I think you told me about them a long time ago. I think it was a lunch table discussion.
I think I might have
live show.
Yeah, I think I might have heard of them on Behold Her, maybe. But yeah, I need to check in with that one again, because
Yeah. I'm trying to look up some information right now to get more. They've got a Patreon, so you can go and support them. But yeah, Queens of Adventure, a new comedy adventure podcast combining Dungeons and Dragons and drag queens. So that's definitely a niche space that I think is really cool to fill. So,
well, there we go.
I have two more since.
Wow. Okay. So, don't list very many.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't have very many, so the fact that I had some is great. So one of them is called Dugongs and Sea Dragons, and I listened to a couple of them a while back, but they're marine biologists that are doing like a 5e actual play from their perspective, which it's actually really entertaining. I don't know if they're still going, but this was a couple years ago. There's Danica. So yeah, it was a couple years ago. I had checked them out, and I enjoyed them very much. So yeah, they're marine biologists doing their thing, which is fun. The last one is, they're not going anymore, but they were very entertaining. Their name's Point Zero Star, and it's a bunch of Canadians that are playing. Yeah, that are playing. Fuck, what was the name of the system they were playing? I can't remember. That's the COVID brain, I'm telling you. I just randomly forget things. Uncharted Worlds, I believe, is what they're playing. So it's a sci-fi. It's another sci-fi actual play, but they're a lot of fun. They're funny. Another podcast I listen to that's not RPG related, I mentioned in the pre-show, is called The Greatest Generation, and it's a rewatch podcast for Star Trek. They built this huge community around it, but there are other members of this community, so they're big Star Trek nerds too. And if you listen to that other podcast, some of the little in jokes on Point Zero Star you'll get. But yeah, but they quit about under a year ago. They ended up having to quit, but yeah, but it's very entertaining, it's funny, and I like it a lot.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and trying to we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. I will post for all you patrons out there to laugh at me. I will post my entire list of all the podcasts I listen to, because I exported my app out so I could make a list for myself. So I will post that on Patreon so you can all laugh at me for my terrible taste in podcasts, or let me know what I'm missing. So yeah, please, tell us what we're missing here. And apparently there's one, Nolando is telling me that Alex Roberts for the Queen, for the Queen and Starcrossed does a podcast called Backstory Podcast, where she interviews RPG creators is finished but good. So check that out. When Nolan sends me a podcast, I definitely listen up. So, is there any other podcast we want to mention real quick before
I want to make sure I mention it because it's awesome and I've had a lot of fun listening to it. The Gallant Night Games podcast, when they broadcast their actual plays, Ashley's a part of it. It's a lot of fun. They did Tiny Cthulhu. That their GM Madi is so amazing, and currently working through Tiny Supers in a really amazing comic book episodic format. So look for their Gallant Night Games. You can go to the YouTube channel and see all their actual plays there, or you can tune in live on Thursday nights.
So is there no RSS for that?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Alan, Alan,
yeah.
Listen to me, Alan. I will listen to it more easily if you let me download it, Alan.
Yeah, I don't know that it's in a podcast format. I know that it's just on YouTube afterwards. So,
so
unexpected guest appearance.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, hey, there. Yep.
So I will post my list. And Ashley, did you have any more? Do you want to wrap up?
No,
Okay.
I have nothing else to say in the realm of gaming podcasts.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you, patrons, for all your fine work helping us stay off the street corners, and really have a good night and good night.
Good night and good luck.
Ending so strong here.